All right, here we go. Start talking. I think this is about as ready as I'll ever be to do this again. I'll probably start drinking here, get loosened up. Definitely need it. Not that I'm super nervous, or am I? Um, last last episode went pretty well. I actually got some feedback. Some people listened to it that I wasn't really expecting anybody to listen to it. So it was nice to hear some of my buddies tell me it was worthwhile. Today is Sunday, the 12th. Kick the feet up here. Let me know how the audio sounds. I'm not great at picking or knowing what it sounds like on the listener's end. I listened to a little bit of the pod from last week just to kind of see how the audio was. I don't like listening to myself, but I had to go back just to see was I a little too loud? Do I need to adjust the gain? I think it was a little too loud. So I moved the gain down a little bit. I'm still getting used to the new mic. I love the new mic. Does the new mic make me a better podcaster? Yeah, a little bit. A little bit. You know, the best podcasts in the world, they all have nice mics. You don't see them with cheap microphones. Not that it can't be done. Not that I haven't made podcasts in the past with a cheap microphone. But this one makes you feel a little better. You feel a little more professional. I love this thing. What can I say? Yeah, another thing I noticed that when I did tune in, I mean, you could really hear everything in my voice. A little bit too much. I could hear myself gulping and my mouth clicking and shit. So I moved it down. Hopefully it makes it better. Hopefully it's makes a difference. I'm keeping an eye on that volume mixer bar that shoots up, and if it gets up into the yellow a little bit too much, I will be moving and adjusting it, and I will not be stopping the recording this week. That was a disaster. That actually might have saved my ass, because the things I talked about when I wasn't recording probably would have gotten me in trouble. I definitely think I said some things that I'm glad didn't get recorded there. Mostly talking about the New Orleans driver, why he did it, what were his motives. I think that was the stuff that was going on when I wasn't recording. This week, though, is a little different because instead of people driving through crowds of people or blowing themselves up in cyber trucks, there's the great fire of Hollywood 2025, the Los Angeles fires. Now, I haven't tried to pay attention closely to what's going on there. I'm a little bit used to the fires by now. Ever since I've moved out to California, it's been 10 years now. It's coming up on 10 years. Every time there's been a fire, people ask me like, "Oh my god, dude, are you being impacted by the fires? Are you okay?" And you know, it's no secret I live in Oceanside down near San Diego, and the fires aren't as prevalent here. And so when those fires do occur, they're almost always happening up in the LA area between Los Angeles and Santa Barbara, I would say. You know, between LA and San Francisco, even. It's always a little bit further up there. San Diego never really gets hit that bad, although we've had small brush fires, not to the scale of Los Angeles. But it's just, it, it's interesting to me that people who I've thought were smart enough to realize how far away I am from all that, they don't really get it because if you're from a place like if you're from a small state like Maryland, well, yeah, if there's like a fire that's about that size, it's going to impact the whole state. But here, not so much. California's a huge fucking state. So no, I'm not impacted. I find it interesting that people still ask to this day, even though it's so far away. I mean, it's an hour and a half drive just to get up to Los Angeles. So I'm not trying to pay attention. I'm a little bit, as unfortunate as it is, used to the fires by this point. They happen so frequently. And I remember one time my friend, his family and him are from South Carolina, and he told me something. There was another one. There was another California fire. This was probably a few years ago, and he told me something like, "Yeah, my dad says that's what you guys get for being liberal. That's what they get for being liberal. They can't put out a freaking fire." Well, okay, hold on, man. Let me for once jump to the defense of the democratically run California. California is sort of a breeding pool for these fires, and it's not because people are liberal. I hate to I hate to shatter the mind of these Southerners who seem to think otherwise, but that's just a fact. Different regions have different things going on in them. I say the same thing about North and South Korea because people say this too. They go, well, the people in North Korea are starving, and it's because they're communist. It's because the country is run by an evil dictator, but not the free people of South Korea. They have capitalism there, and that's why everyone is flourishing. And I thought that for many years. I thought that for most of my life. I thought that to be true. Until you ask yourself why, and you look into why is North Korea that way, and you start to learn about North Korea. You watch some documentaries. You watch that documentary that, I mean, no shit, I'm not making this up. There was a documentary, still is, if it's out there, of Harlem Globetrotter basketball players going to North Korea and their minds just being fucking blown the entire time. Look, when I started the podcast, I didn't mean to go into this rabbit hole about North Korea. I wanted to talk about the fires, but while we're here, it's funny because Kim Jong-un, the leader of North Korea, grew up in Europe. He went to like some private international boarding school in like Sweden, I think, or somewhere in the Netherlands. So it's kind of funny to think that like, no, he knows what it's like in the rest of the world, like what the rest of the world has as far as technologies go and as far as what their cultures are like. It's not like he's been confined to North Korea and doesn't have access to see what the rest of these places are. So it's kind of funny. Most of the people in North Korea haven't traveled abroad, yet he has. He knows the sports that exists, the cultures that are out there, especially being in Europe. I mean, he's aware of things like democracy. I mean, he knows how the world works, yet his country is the way it is. But growing up in Europe in the 90s, Kim Jong-un was a big fan of the NBA. He liked basketball. They showed it in the movie that movie, The Interview. He actually likes basketball. He grew up admiring Michael Jordan and whatnot. So this documentary, I think Dennis Rodman was involved. No, he definitely was, and they kind of reached out to North Korea. It was a shot in the dark. It was one of those things that they reached out to North Korea and they're like, "Hey, we would love to do a basketball camp for North Korean youth." Um, it was a trip to go out there and uh, try to ease diplomatic tensions between North Korea and South Korea. And I am going somewhere with this. I will circle back to Hollywood with all this. So just bear with me. I find this interesting. It's my podcast. I can talk about whatever I want, so I will. They go out, they offer to go out, ease diplomatic tensions between the West and North Korea. To their shock, North Korea is like, "Yeah, come on out." And they were kind of like, "Oh shit, we didn't expect you guys to say yes. I guess we will go out." So like five, however many so of the Harlem Globetrotters go out, and they go to North Korea. It's what you'd expect if you even know what to expect. If you don't know what to expect, you're kind of watching the thing like, holy shit. I mean, I think this was the same documentary where they go into my cat's going, and I might have to open the door because the cat doesn't like it when doors are closed. So if that keeps distracting me, I'm gonna have to go open that door. But she's going. Let me just get it real quick. I like to talk with the door closed. I put off recording this podcast until Kaylin wasn't home, and Kaylin ended up coming home, but then she went on a walk, so she's gonna be gone for about an hour on her walks around the neighborhood, and I have about that much time to get to the point here. Where was I? So they go to North Korea. It's pretty dystopian. If you know anything about North Korea, it's what you'd expect. If you don't know anything about North Korea, you're kind of like, holy shit. I mean, there's a scene where they go to like a fucking internet cafe, and the whole point was the North Korean media or the North Korean hosts were showing off like their internet capabilities, their technological capabilities, and how well versed these North Koreans are with tech and computers. So they go to a computer cafe, the Harlem fucking Globetrotters, a bunch of big black dudes. If you think about it through the lens of a black dude, it's even funnier because they're like, what the fuck, man? What is this shit, man? These Korean people are crazy. Yeah, man. I mean, for me, I'm a little more tuned in. It's a little less foreign to me. I was a PACOM analyst in the military, so I'm familiar. But like a black dude who just played basketball his whole life, and he's just in fucking North Korea, like, holy shit. So they step into this cafe, this computer cafe, and everyone's just sitting at their computer on the desktop, on the opening desktop, and clearly none of them know how to use a computer. I mean, they're just moving the mouse around, and they're just kind of like clicking on the desktop, and it's like kind of dead silent. And the North Korean hosts are like, "Yes, look, we have technology here. We have computers here. What do you guys think about that?" And all these whole Harlem Globetrotters. This was a different fucking documentary potentially, but it definitely happened. It's been in more than one, but they're kind of like, "Oh, nice." And then there's like one guy who knows how to use a computer, and it's coincidentally the only guy they let the camera crew talk to, because the camera crew's following the Harlem Globetrotters around, and he it's funny because as he's speaking to the people with the cameras, the documentary crew, he almost looks annoyed, like, you're interrupting me. He's kind of faking that attitude of like, Yeah, I'm like working on something here, but like I know how to use the computer and it's pretty and I don't think it's hooked up to the internet like but he's kind of like, yeah, I know what I'm doing and he's not really like looking at them. He's like kind of like talking to the screen as he does it, but I just thought that was interesting. So, back to the point. That was a long side tangent, but this is why I like doing these cuz I can talk without interruption and I don't have somebody go get you, what does this have to do with it? I'm getting there. So, if I'm talking too loud of the mic, just turn it down. I don't know how to do the volume here. I'm not an audio engineer. I'm in the green. I'm looking at that bar. I said that earlier. I'm looking in the bar. I'm in the green. I'm not touching the yellow. I'm not touching the red. Well, so here's the thing. So North Korea is a little more impoverished, a lot more impoverished. 70% of the land in North Korea is inagorable. I don't know if that's a word, but what I mean is it can't be farmed on. I'm gonna have to look that up real quick. Hold on. It's gonna bother me. Let me like research this here. Inagorable. Arable. Inarable. Arable. The land can't be fucking farmed on. 70% of the land. I hit that mute button again. I knew I'd do that. 70% of the land in North Korea cannot be farmed on. You know, their rural areas are very mountainous. South Korea is very flat. North Korea is colder. South Korea is warmer. There are flash floods in those mountainous regions that completely wipe out crops. So a lot of the harvests can get totally ruined. It's really just luck of the draw. It's not as simple as one side is communist, one side is not. Now, I am a capitalist. I do believe in a free market economy. I think capitalism is the worst option for how to run an economy, except for every other way. I heard someone say that once. It was sort of like, hey, it's not perfect. It's the worst option, but everything else is the worst. I really think that. I mean, and America's not executing it perfectly. There's things about capitalism that I think right now in America we're doing wrong. You can watch the last episode. If you don't believe me, I got into a little bit there. There are things about America. I've said capitalism works, but it needs to be regulated. Remember, in the Gilded Age, you had all these, they were millionaires then, but they're basically like billionaires today, where like a whole, company like owned all of the steel. And so they owned the railways and they owned, AT&T owned all the phone lines. And these things have to be broken up because eventually with capitalism, monopolies are created. Power gets amassed and centralized, and it's up to the governments to sort of break these things up. They should be putting grains of rice on the scale of justice. I'm not saying they put their finger on it and push it down, but they should be putting grains of rice here and there to keep things fair. Do they do that? No. And I think that's why capitalism looks so bad right now, because they don't do that enough. It should be slightly regulated. Now you've got people who are saying, like fucking Luigi, whoever else, well, we need to just tear everything up and start over, and there needs to be revolutions. I don't really buy into all that. I don't subscribe to all that. But things need to be adjusted. So, yes, there are fires in California. No, it's not just because they're liberal, they're government. I remember when my friend's dad made that comment, I kind of thought, like, that is sick and twisted, man. I mean, if something happened in South Carolina, I think Lindsey Graham is like fucking weird. I've always thought that. And then a few weeks ago, I think Rogan and Tim Dillon were talking about him, and he's clearly a closeted gay guy from the South. I mean, he's so weird. Like, there's just something really off about that guy. He doesn't even really seem like somebody who people from South Carolina would like. But if something happened in South Carolina, if there was fires or whatever, I wouldn't be like, well, that's what they get. I don't like Lindsey Graham. No, I'd still go like, dude, that's pretty fucked up. Natural disasters suck. Like Hurricane Katrina hit South Carolina pretty hard. I think no, it wasn't Katrina, it was Isabella in 04. Hurricane Isabella in 2004 hit South Carolina. It was pretty bad. But when they were picking up the pieces, I wasn't going, hey man, if they weren't a red state, hey, good, that's what they get. That's what they get because they're Republicans and they don't stand up for women's rights. And no, I didn't think that, and I wouldn't think that if that happened now. Does that make me a better person? Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. Does that make me a better person? You decide. So there's fires in Los Angeles. And I want to come to the defense of the government here because they can't control these fires. I was just talking to my buddy about this. He's, what the fuck do you want them to do? He's like, what do you want them to do? Sometimes these fires break out. Yeah, that's true. But the frustration I was expressing to him is like, I like with these Hollywood fires, I don't even know what to think. It's been so politicized. I don't even know who's telling the truth. I don't keep up with procedures of fire departments and city governments and state governments. I don't know because there's so much finger pointing that I've just been seeing, and I want to get into it, but I don't know how do you get to the truth anymore. So I'm going to ask the fire guys, firemen. There's firemen that work out at my gym, and I talk to them sometimes. They go to the sauna. We, whatever. But I'd like to ask them, like, hey man, what's your take on it? Because there's firefighters going to hydrants right now trying to put out these fires in Los Angeles, and there's no water, and everyone's pointing the finger. Well, the state reservoirs are full. The city reservoirs are the ones that weren't full. Okay, well then the mayor's going, well, we're doing everything we can for the fire department. And the fire chief's going, well, we were failed. But I don't know who. No, all I know is no one's taking accountability. There's a lot of finger pointing. No one's being the leader that you would want if the city goes up in flames. Everyone's just pointing the finger. Governor Newsom's going, well, we need to stop all the misinformation. Well, can you just worry about the fire? The last thing I saw online, he was talking about rebuilding everything. And I'm like, the flames are still up. Put them out first. And it's things like that that really make me think like, man, dude, maybe these guys do want everything to fucking burn. I mean, he's probably looking at this and getting calls and going, dude, we can redevelop this whole fucking city. I've got real estate developers that are willing to pay me like to put fucking condos on this land. We had the shopping mall here, but if we put it here, we're going to make more money. Let's build a new shopping mall over here where people used to live. And instead of rebuilding single family homes, we're going to build, apartment complexes owned by BlackRock and all these other companies that are going to rent out to people. It's great. That's the look they have in their eyes. I don't want the city to burn. Don't get mad at me. I didn't start the fire. Well, that's another thing. Who started the fire? We don't know. That's not what I wanted to happen to Los Angeles. But you can see the look in their eyes. They're thinking of the possibilities, the money to be made, just like they did in Maui. I mean, in Maui, we had this very recently, and this is why it is a little frustrating that some of these reservoirs were empty and the fire hydrants didn't have water in them because, I mean, we all know California is susceptible to these fires. So going back to addressing what my friend's dad said, and why I got into all this talk about North Korea in the first place, like North Korea is not, you just can't grow crops there, but that's just the way it is. That's the way the land is. In California, you are just susceptible to fires. There's long droughts, which dries up the grasslands, and then it'll rain. Like I think we had a lot of rain last year, the year before. And I remember asking one of those firemen at my gym, I'm like, "Hey, that's good, right? Because then it won't be as dry." He goes, "Well, yeah, I mean, but all this rain means the crops are going to grow now, and then if it doesn't rain, then they'll dry out, and then they're just ready to be set ablaze again. So you can't have it all." So you have a perfect storm where this thing's about to go up in flames, and everyone knew it. So why was the Palisade Reservoir empty? What was down for maintenance? Well, why was it empty for a year? Well, things just take a long time in the government. Okay, well, tell that to the people who don't have a house right now. I'm sure some of you guys have seen the videos that are out there, and I'm probably going to try and play one or two clips later, but whose job is it really to go like, well, we're going to shut down the reservoir for over a year, and I know that this was the reservoir of water where the fire department was theoretically going to use all the water from if there's a fire, but who's going to tell the fire chief that? Is it the fire chief's job to check up on these things periodically? Let's check the hydrants periodically and make sure they're full, just in case there's a fire tomorrow. We'll check once a month. Here, let me tap into the commissioner of the water and energy and see like, hey, how are the reservoirs looking? Can we get a report? Can we get a monthly update? I don't know. No one's saying, yeah, I should have done that. Because if they do, their scalp is going to be on a fucking stick in front of City Hall. Right? I'll tell you the other big problem LA has that no one's fucking talking about. A lot of criticism. Toward that mayor. I've got an opinion on this, believe it or not. What did you expect was going to happen when you voted someone named Karen as the mayor? Did you expect the city not to burn down? I don't vote. I'm outspoken about not voting, about not believing in democracy. But if I were a voter and I went to the ballot box and it was Karen, I'd think twice. If I go into the ballot box and it's Karen and someone else, I'm not voting Karen just if I don't know anything else about these other people, these other candidates. Does that make me a misogynist? No. If her name was Melissa, I'd start to ask questions about, okay, well, what are these people's beliefs? What are their platforms? How are they going to? But I'm not voting for Karen. I mean, for fuck's sake, the name became a thing, a phenomenon for a reason. You're being a Karen. This woman was acting like a Karen. Local Karen screams at kids for painting chalk on the sidewalk. I mean, it became like a thing, and I know women named Karen. They're sweet ladies. I'm not saying that the women I know who are named Karen are bad people or that they even act like that, but there is that like stigma there. It is a thing. And then I do look into her, and I mean, I see I'm sure everybody's seen the video by now. She gets off the plane, and the guy's like, "Hey, man, there's a fire. What do you think?" And speechless. He's like, "Yeah, there's a fire. What do you have to say about it?" And she's just crickets. You know, Karens are not people named Karen, but you know what I mean. These middle-aged women, they're all really good at deflecting blame. Let me speak to the manager. Well, what happens? You are the fucking manager now. You are the fucking mayor. Now what? You appointed the fire chief, who, by the way, not that I have a problem with anyone being a lesbian, but someone who made their whole personality out to be a fucking lesbian. And then who appointed all these other people in the fire department in positions of leadership also happen to be lesbians. Look, lesbians, everyone should be allowed to be in these positions. But when the mayor's a Karen, and the fire chief's a lesbian, and the assistant fire chief's a lesbian, I want to pull up her video in a minute. And the insurance commissioner has a pride flag for his whole thing. They showed his Twitter profile. His background banner is pride. He's got the pride flag. Hey, I'm all for this stuff. What the fuck does that have to do with insurance? What the fuck does that have to do with the fire? The fire chief should be a guy with a goatee. It should be a white guy with a goatee. And I'm not saying that because I'm racist. I'm not trying to take money out of anyone's pockets here. The fire chief needs to have a fucking mustache or a goatee, period. And when you have a conversation with him, he should have nothing else to say but fucking fire. Shit. Hey, man, did you watch the game? Did you watch the playoffs game? Dude, we're worried about training and putting out these fires. Okay, fuck yeah, dude. I like that. I've been on this department for 20 years. Yeah, man, that's the guy everybody wants to listen to when the fucking city goes up. A guy with a goatee who's like, "Hey, man, don't worry about it. We made sure the fire hydrants have water. We're taking care of. We're actually going to put this fire out before it spreads into the residential areas." Instead of all the finger pointing. Tosh Point has a funny joke about that. He was like, he's like, I'll fix racism in the police department. Only black people can be cops. They're no nonsense people, anyways. They're problem solved. No more racism in the cop department. Oh, what are we gonna do with all the white guys? We'll make them the firefighters. They like to be outdoors. That's the joke. They're more outdoorsy, anyways. I don't even know if I want to play the clip. There's the clip, you may or may not have seen it. I'm not going to play it. Look it up if you want, if you don't believe me. Dylan, you're spreading misinformation. No, there's a fucking clip. I saw it and you can find it yourself. I'm not making this shit up. I'm not taking anything out of context either. It's this fat uh um butch lesbian firefighter who they interviewed her, someone interviewed her for a video, and she's talking about, you know, DEI, not talking about putting out fires, obviously. And she's like, well, people tell me because I'm a woman, well, maybe I shouldn't be a firefighter. And they ask me, well, can you carry my husband out of a burning building? To which my response to them is, well, if I have to carry your husband out of a burning building, then he got himself in the wrong place. I like how she's kind of still has to be a little sassy. He got himself in the wrong place. Yeah, he does have himself in the wrong place. He's living in fucking Los Angeles. That's the wrong place to be. The fire department is fucked up. They don't have water. LA is quite literally the wrong place if you're living there. You should probably move out now if your house hasn't already burned down. So here's the other thing, because I know people are upset about the insurance companies. So I looked into that a little bit. So watch the All In podcast. One of the co-hosts, David Freeberg, is he came from middle class. He's a billionaire now. He owned Climate Corp, which was basically this science company that tracks weather data and sells it to insurance companies so that they can adjust rates accordingly to whatever. So he knows this stuff. He's worked in the insurance. He's not malicious. I think he's a vegan. He's really climate conscious and everything. So don't get on me because he the B word. He's a billionaire. They get into on the pod about the insurance stuff, because if you've been paying attention to this, there was the fires in Los Angeles. The insurance companies were canceling people's policies before their house went up in flames. And at first I saw that and I thought, oh my God, that is so fucked up. How are they allowed to do that? Wait, these people had fire insurance on their homes, and then after the fire started, the insurance companies canceled their policy? That can't be legal. That's so fucked. These people pay all this money to insure their house for quite literally the thing that we're going through right now, and then these companies cancel it? That's insane. They get into it on the pod and they go through some of the details. Well, it turns out the insurance companies knew that there was a heightened risk of fires in that area. There was that big fire in 2018 in the Los Angeles area, and that one never got as big as the one we're dealing with now. It was mostly in mountains, and I'm sure some people had houses up there in the Pasadena and stuff like that. All the celebrities live up there in those big mansions. Just a little bit, just to keep this going. So the insurance companies canceled people's policies. Well, I found out, like, after listening to them, this stuff didn't happen after the fire started. Because I get it. Everybody wants to blame the insurance companies, just like Luigi, and you want to blame the health insurance, you want to blame the property insurance. I get that. Well, they got into it. These policies were canceled like way before the fires, and they started going, why? You have to ask why. The smartest people ask why. The dumb people go, well, I know. Okay, why did they cancel it? Well, the dumb people go, well, insurance companies are evil. But if you keep asking why, you understand how the world works. And I implore you to ask that question more. So the insurance companies knew there was an increased risk for fires in that area, probably after 2018 when everything burnt down in the first time. And they knew that there were winds going through that area, and they knew the land was dry and people's houses were expensive, and if there's a fire, people's houses would likely burn down, and so they tried to allegedly increase people's premiums to pay for the house, because if there's a 1% chance that your $1 million home is going to get burned down per year, then you pay whatever 1% of that is, $1,000, $10,000. I don't know. Kaylin just came home. I'm going to close the door so she doesn't hear me. So I like doing this when Kaylin's not home because I feel like I could talk without judgment. But if she overhears me talking about lesbians, and she's gonna be upset. She's not gonna like that. Not that I'm saying anything wrong. I love lesbians, just not the ones that are in the LA Fire Department. So I will be like talking a little quieter now. I'll try to. So whatever 1% of $1 million is, I'm not great at math. $1,000, $10,000. That's what your premium is a year. But if they go, hey, because of these external factors, the land's drier, the Santa Ana winds are going to be picking up, and we're going to have to increase your premiums to about 5% because there's now a 5% chance. So your premium's going to go up. There's, in California, I don't know if it's like this in the other 49 states, but in California, there's the California Insurance Commissioner, who's appointed by, I'm sure, Newsom or somebody else. And they said, hey, you can't raise people's premiums this much, but we're going to put a price ceiling on that. You can't charge people that much money for insurance. That's unethical. And the insurance companies are like, dude, if we only get like $10,000, we can't pay for a fucking $1 million house. The money's just not there. The math doesn't math. And so the commission stepped in, and I mentioned him earlier. His whole thing is being gay, LGBT. I think his bio is, I'm the first LGBT plus member of California Insurance Commissioner. That's fine. So he stopped this stuff, and then the policies got canceled, and then the houses went up in flames, and everybody just wants to point the blame there. So if you're mad at the insurance companies, look into it. Watch their podcast, All In Podcast. It was really informative. I'm not doing it justice. You know what I thought? Maybe the insurance companies knew the fire chief was a lesbian, and they were just like, uh-oh. They saw the video of her talking, and they went, nope, you ain't putting out a fire. We can't afford to, what if that's what it was? There's no way you're checking in on the reservoir. There's no fucking way these chicks are checking in on the reservoir. Could you imagine that board meeting? Dude, there's no way these chicks are checking in on those reservoirs. We should check. Is the reservoir empty? Send somebody down there. Oh, it is? Fuck. These bitches are worried about their strap-ons, and they should be worried about putting out the fucking flames that aren't here yet, but we know are going to be here. What's the assistant fire department chief doing? Oh, she's making videos about not wanting to carry people's husbands out of the flames. Cancel their fucking policies now, dude. Fuck it. Let's see. Is this video not going to be on YouTube? Of course it's not. It's on TikTok. That's why they want TikTok banned. Why can't I find this video?
Just how woke is the LA Fire Department? The chief also checks out.
Come on, dude.
Fire call that looks like you. It gives that person a little bit more ease, knowing that somebody might understand their situation better. Yeah, listen, I know your house burned down.
That's my job. He got himself in the wrong place if I have to carry him out of a fire. And by a wrong place, I mean the idiot decided to move to Los Angeles. I believe in balance. So I understand people want to make fun of me and compare me to Alex Jones, whatever that means. I believe in balance. Okay? You can't have everybody be a DEI hire. You can't have everybody in the department be a bunch of lesbians. You can't have the mayor also be Karen. I believe in balance, yin and yang. Everyone should be welcome in the fire department. They should go, "Can you put out a fire?" And then the guy goes, "Yep." "Okay, fine. Well, why are you?" Because I know some people are going to hear this and go, "You're racist." That's misogynistic. That's homophobic. Okay, well, that's your opinion. I'm just saying I think that there should just be balance. And when the city goes up in flames, somebody needs to be the leader that stands at the podium and rallies the troops. It should be me. Hey, we're going to get through this together as a city. LA strong. We're going to get the water here. I'm going to figure it out. Believe it or not, we were prepared for this. Believe it or not, as the mayor, I've been working with the fire department for years, and we've prepared for things like this. We have a plan in place. Okay? Trust in us. Be safe out there. We're here to save you. We're here to help you. Instead, it's just crickets, dead silence, finger pointing. I think we've had enough. I mean, I want to move on. I really don't like harping about this. The reason I'm so invested in this is because it really is right up the street. It's so close to where I live. I think if this stuff was happening, I try to tune these natural disasters and things out. I always say things out of my control. I can't do anything. I really can't do anything about this stuff. I sound like an asshole critiquing it, but it's just right up the road from me. So we'll move on. I guess I have to pat myself on the back. I said Mike Vrabel would not coach the Jets, and I was right. I knew he wasn't. He didn't. It's like I said, when he was the defensive coordinator for the Texans, The Browns wanted to hire him, and he's like, I'm not going to a fucking chaotic organization. And for the same reason, he's not going to the Jets. And so he just got hired to be the Patriots coach. And so now the Jets are going to have to face him twice a year. And I mean, he's a good coach. I got a lot of respect for that guy. But I did call that one. A lot of people didn't see that coming. I did. You know, they should make me the coach of the fucking team. I don't know what else to talk about now, dude. I got nothing right now. I like to bring everything back full circle. You know, I could go on about Kim Jong-un. We were talking about him earlier. He's so fat. I mean, how many fat Korean people do you see in your life? I've heard some crazy stories about that guy. He's got like a concubine for every week of his life. He did at one point. I remember he kind of disappeared for a while, and there was people in the news speculating he might have had some health crisis. It leaked he was in a vegetable state. I don't think he has any heirs to his throne yet. I don't think he has any kids. Imagine that. There's a North Korean Game of Thrones where Kim Jong-un sits on the Iron Throne, the Korean Iron Throne. Oh, bring me kimchi. Bring me bulgogi onto my Iron Throne. He's got a fucking dragon. He's got a Korean dragon. I remember at one point when they were saying if he died, the next in line, the next in kin was like his sister, and they were like, she's worse than he. They're like, if you think he's crazy, she's fucking nuts. And then they showed a picture of her, and I was like, yeah, that bitch is crazy. You could see it in her eyes. She's the Cersei. She's the North Korean Cersei. God, dude, I would love to watch a Korean Game of Thrones. You betray me. You dishonor your country. We kind of had that with Squid Game. I just finished Squid Game season 2. Obviously, it wasn't going to be as good as the first one. That first season was fucking phenomenal. I remember watching that. I was in Denver. Kaylin and I were in Denver, and it was like, holy shit. We were going to go do stuff that night because we were in a new city. We went back to the hotel room and binged that shit. Squid Games. Season 2 was good. A Korean Game of Thrones, though, this might be like $1 billion idea. I'm almost done with the book, Fire and Blood. Super different than the show. Super different from the show. The book is fucking, I mean, it's phenomenal. In the show, I've said I don't like how they sort of made a protagonist and an antagonist. Team Black are the good guys, Team Green are the bad guys. But in the book, it's written in a way that's much more, again, that word, balanced. Alicent isn't a cunt in the book. They tried to make her a cunt in the show. Rhaenyra, Princess and Queen Rhaenyra is not a lesbian. They made her a lesbian in the show. They were never friends to begin with in the book. That's the other thing. Alicent and Rhaenyra they were never friends in the book. So there was no betrayal. I won't spoil things. What if they were Korean? Jon Soyuk, Rhaenyra, Targaryen. The theme. The theme isn't that like da da dun dun da da dun dun da da dun. It's like a Korean K-pop. I don't know. They're drinking soju instead of wine. I mean, who's to say? Who's to say that Game of Thrones they're not all Korean? You know, it's kind of how like when they do the show, they diversify everybody up. There's like they start throwing in like black characters and Mexican characters and shit. And then the writers hit back. They're like, well, who's to say that this character isn't black? Well, it's kind of like, well, how do you know they're not all Korean? No one's ever asked George R.R. Martin. I would. He's also a Jets fan. We're coming up on an hour. It was fun. There's a little more pressure to talking on the here by myself, knowing now that people are listening. I have fucking listeners, which I'm grateful for. Give me feedback. That's fine. Give me criticism. I can take it. I have to. The pressure stems from I feel like I have to keep it a little more interesting, especially because I know who's listening, Grant, and he's not going to tune in if I'm talking about bullshit. So I've got to talk about fucking, you know, fucking Stalin and Hitler being unconventionally attractive, which I just learned about. I mean, could you imagine what I could get away with if I was attractive? And also, what's the difference between Hitler being unconventionally attractive and me being unconventionally attractive? Because if you're saying Hitler's not attractive, he's unconventionally attractive. Okay, well, I'm not attractive either, but I'm not unconventionally attractive. I'm just ugly. I mean, could you imagine, guys, what we could get away with? It's not just me. I mean, who could get away with massacres? Massacres. People would look the other way. He's handsome. Remember what they said about Luigi? Something about the eyebrows. I don't know. He's just hot. I mean, fuck, dude. It just makes you wonder. You know, I remember learning like Abraham Lincoln didn't like having a beard, but he'd grow his beard out on the campaign trail. So if you actually see pictures of Abraham Lincoln, it was either before he was elected the first time or it was when he was on the campaign trail in the middle of the Civil War. He'd grow out his beard because the women liked it. I knew they couldn't vote, but they had, you know, it's sort of something that doesn't get talked about enough. Women had sway, just like in Game of Thrones. Yeah, like Cersei technically didn't have power, but like women throughout history have always had these things. You know, their husband's going, I'm going to the poll booth. I'm a little undecided. But if your wife thinks Abraham Lincoln's attractive, she might just say like, hey, you know, she's not going to say like she thinks he's hot, but she's, hey, Abraham, I think if we give him one more term, he can end this war. And, you know, they're being sly. Women can be conniving and manipulative in good ways and bad ways. It's sort of their thing. If I could grow a beard, I mean, fuck. How do we end this? How do we end this thing, man? I mean, we can end it exactly on 1 hour. I want to hit at least 1 hour here. Let me know. Oh, dude, I totally forgot to talk about how the fires even get started in Los Angeles. Maybe I'll save that for next week. I mean, think about how easy it would be for Iran or someone like, you know, a country like Iran or China who wants to see America burn. They just have to send one guy over here with a blowtorch. They caught somebody with a blowtorch. There's a lot of arsonists and looting now. But I mean, if you're Iran and you have an understanding of the Santa Ana winds and the weather patterns, and you go, hey, man, we could just send one guy in with a blowtorch and he can just destroy this whole city. Who's to say that's not what happened? I mean, who are these arsonists they're catching? We don't know anything about them. You know, one guy with a blowtorch, $50 billion of damage. You do the math. It seems worth it to me if you're an enemy of the state. Maybe it was me. No, it wasn't. Don't accuse me of that. That's not funny. I didn't do it. I was here. I have alibis. I wouldn't do that in the first place. Maybe it was one of you. Maybe it was one of the listeners. Maybe one of the listeners went up there with a little blowtorch, a little box of matches, and some gasoline. Someone wanted to channel their Heath Ledger Joker. Have a little fun. It's not about the money. Some men just want to watch the world burn. It was one of my 2 listeners. I'm almost certain they heard me speaking. And in their schizophrenic states, they thought, I have to do this. I have to burn down Los Angeles. I know it was one of you. Turn yourselves in.